These two questions are examined and put to the test. Christian doctrine, Christian beliefs, examined and answered. One purpose, one goal. Operation Apologetics. Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? It's Swerve with OA Operation Apologetics. Listen, we got a very special guest here in the building. We got Vocab Malone, the street apologist. What's up, Vocab?
Nothing much, man. I think we should get a round of applause for the beginning of the show. Are you ready? I got a little sound effect. Here it comes.
Okay, let's see. I like it. Let's go.
This is your first time going live, isn't it, bro?
It's my first live. Absolutely, it is my first live. A few videos up on the channel, but yeah, the first live video. But I think it's a special occasion. I think it's very important right now. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff. But before we get into that, what's been going on with you, man? You been all right?
Well, you make it sound like you're about to talk about the riots and the protests and everything else. So you make it, so you just made it sound like, bro. So
well, that's part of it. Holy smokes, I think that needs some attention. But I'm talking about with the Black Hebrew Israelites, man. We met them a few weeks ago. I mean, that was nuts. That was my first time meeting these guys. I mean, you do it all the time. This is your thing, but this is my first time meeting them, and it was nuts.
Yeah.
That was nuts.
I'm constantly hanging out with Hebrew Israelites, Irvin. Constantly,
man. You're like one of the only ones that I see all over YouTube anywhere. The only one doing this stuff. So, man, I think you're the professional. You're the guy I want when it comes to Black Hebrew Israelites.
Well, there's definitely quite a number of us, but I know that I had to introduce them to you, and so I was glad that you were able to roll out with us all together. So we had a little theological apologetics adventure.
Yeah, that we did. That I mean, I don't know about it wasn't too theological from their point. You hit them with some theological words, but not so much from them. Now, what group was this? I know there's reading your book, there's several different groups. What group was this particular group?
They used to be part, I guess, of GMS Tempe, called Great Millstone, and then it looks like they are down with GMS, but it looks like GMS Phoenix isn't very active, and so this essentially is almost like the GMS group or camp of another city, which of course is the city of Tempe. And so for all practical purposes, I would say they're GMS Tempe. So they're not the GMS Phoenix camp, but they're GMS Tempe. However, they were really ambivalent. They kind of went back and forth as in regards to if they were officially GMS campers. And so I think they didn't seem to indicate like an actual name for their camp. So you could say they're GMS affiliated or GMS influenced, but it seems to me to make sense to describe them as GMS Tempe. And most of the response videos that have come out were by other GMS members, so they seem like they were kind of down with them in that circle and stuff. That stands for Great Millstone Israelites. Their name comes out
GMS.
Yeah, it comes out of Revelation chapter 18, where the angel throws up a great millstone in as part of the destruction of Babylon.
Interesting.
And so they believe that's kind of their role, I guess.
Okay, so let's tell everybody first of all what happened. So I met Vocab. We were in is that downtown? That's not downtown.
That's
Tempe,
downtown Tempe, yeah. Because when you're on Mill Avenue, I mean, if you go a little bit further, over by like the police station, that's sort of still considered downtown. And in a way, the campus of ASU, I think, is sort of downtownish, but really I think Mill Avenue, I don't know, it's definitely the strip of Tempe, you know what I mean? That's the place where everyone goes on. I would, generally speaking, consider it downtown or mighty close to downtown Tempe. I don't know what else would be considered downtown Tempe, but on Mill Avenue, it's like you've been there before. You probably taken the wife out there a few times, maybe.
Yeah, we've been out there a few times. Had some Starbucks and some cookies. They got this Big Bear place out there with ice cream. Oh, it's amazing. Anyway, so we get out there, we get to downtown Tempe, and meet up with Vocab, and I see some people, down the way next to a construction site, right?
Yeah.
Dressed like some ghetto Power Rangers.
Mm.
And so we go up, and it's just the two guys, and I'm like, okay, this should be fun, this should be interesting. But they're standing there, they've got a camera on a tripod standing there, and I'm like, I want to hear what these guys got to say. I see it all the time, all over, all over the YouTube and the internet, things like that. But I've never seen it in person. So being out there, meeting with you guys was actually it was incredible. I mean, one of the weirdest things I've ever seen, but it was incredible. And GMS, I mean, the behavior of these guys, it was nowhere near probably what you're used to seeing, but it was, for the first time being out there, it was nuts. Now, they were using foul language and using the Bible at the same time. Is that typical? Is that typical behavior of these guys?
Yeah. I mean, especially GMS, like IUIC, they wear purple and yellow, purple and gold. They appear almost every Saturday in Phoenix at 27th Avenue and Indian School. They used to go out there at Thomas on 44th, and that's when we got them for Islamicize Me. But they make it a official policy to essentially be PG. So they might say, basically stuff that you would hear in a Star Wars movie, the D word, the H word. That's kind of max, right? So that's sort of they try to be professional. Sakari, who also meets in Tempe. One day we're gonna go with them as well. Sakari Tempe. They're incredibly foul, super foul. ISUPK can get pretty foul. It goes down the list, but GMS is definitely no holds barred when it comes to the language, and they think you're soft or weak if you can't get with it. You know what I'm saying? They kind of think that. So when they were like cursing, it was really mild. I don't mean the words they were saying per se, but they were really mild in the sense that, they weren't doing them hyper aggressive and like the ways you can see these guys do it. They were just like kind of saying it almost casually as part of what they say every now and then, but that's real normal. There's only two guys. There's an old like trope that the more ninjas you have in a movie, and people don't say in a movie, but it's because it's in movies. The more ninjas you have, the weaker they become, each one. Because if you watch like a lot of like old karate or kung fu or certain martial arts films, if it's just one ninja that the person has to fight, he's like really tough and very difficult to beat. But when it's like 20 ninjas attacking or something, then like one guy can beat 20 ninjas. You know what I'm saying? My point by saying that, it's the law of exponential weakness when it comes to ninjas. I mean actual ninjas in martial arts films, what I'm talking about. It's like an old joke nerds talk about. Well, it's like that with GMS, except it's different. The curse words exponentially increase the more of them there are out there. The threats about a slavery for you in the future and what's going to happen to you, it grows with each member. You know what I'm saying? It's the different kind of law there when it comes to GMS.
Yeah, and I kind of want to talk about that too. We'll get to that in a second, about the whole slavery and eat them and putting white people, stomping and licking boots. We'll get to that, but you would question them on a ton of things, right? One of them was reincarnation, but they would just avoid it. I mean, I would expect, if I'm going to go out, I mean, you look at some of these videos on YouTube, right? I would expect to go out there, and with the presence that these guys have, I'd expect them to have this profound knowledge that they're going to share and witness to people who they want to, win them over to their faith, their belief. I saw none of that. I mean, why is that? I mean, did they just not have the answers? I mean, obviously what they believe is false. Maybe some of the things that they believe is true, but I won't get into that. But is it because they just don't know the answers? Do they not have the answers? I mean, what is it?
Well, so I
was real confused by it, because they act all high and mighty outside when I'm watching it, but it was confusing. So what's that about?
Right. So it's a few things. One is, when there's only two guys, they're not really hidden by like whoever the top dog is, who kind of runs around and maybe has a stronger gift of rhetoric or maybe, knows a little, like there's sort of like, it's like, if you're at a Division I school, there's a lot of players to choose from to get on your team. If you're Division like 4, it's smaller school, slimmer pickings. Well, they're kind of a Division 4 camp, in a manner of speaking. So there's just two guys. There's like not really anywhere to hide. Nobody else can kind of answer you except for that one other guy. It's Batman and Robin. That's it. That's all you got, right? And so with that type of situation, I think some of the weakness, to be honest, it kind of shows up. That's one thing. The other thing is that they are used to questions by people who don't know much about their doctrine, and so they get hit with the same questions. And so they're like Jehovah's Witnesses who come to your front door. They already know what to say. So you're like, well, wait a minute. What about John 3:16?
Yeah.
Show him how, go to Isaiah and show him how the word world in John 3:16 can actually just mean Israel. So when it says God so loved the world, it means he so loved the world of Israel. See, you don't know anything. Like they kind of already know how to shut that person down because they don't really know their doctrine. It's a little bit different situation, not just with me, but with any given Christian. And what I'm trying to do is model it for those who don't know, so they can deal with Hebrew Israelites in their life or in the city, in their block, in their own way and with their own vibe, but they can use some of the things, the same like things they find helpful, right? That's what I'm trying to do. Is model these arguments. And so it's a little bit different when somebody comes to them, Irvin, who actually has some idea about their doctrine. So they can't give answers that are totally inconsistent with other things they believe. And they're getting asked much more specific questions, very specific. Why do you think Abba Bivens was Elijah reincarnated? Because you just told me nobody knows who they are in the reincarnation, as you call it. Yet you think you know who Abba Bivens was. You think Abba Bivens was John the Baptist and Elijah. Now, how is that if you just told me nobody knows who anyone is in the reincarnation? Now, notice that's actually very presuppositional. I'm just saying this so people kind of see some of my mindset going into this. I'm actually essentially accepting their assumption to ask the question. I am assuming, and sometimes people will do this, they'll say, for the sake of argument, I'm assuming, okay, you tell me reincarnation is the Bible. Okay, reincarnation is in the Bible then. We'll say that that's true for this argument. I also know you believe that a man named Abba Bivens was John the Baptist and Elijah reincarnated. So that's part of what you believe. So let's look at those two things, because I also know a third thing, which is you teach that, and because they said all this out on the street, that nobody can know who they are and nobody knows who anyone is in the reincarnated state.
But they know that.
So we have a conflict here, and that's called an internal critique of a system. It's an internal critique, sometimes called, in philosophical language, they'll say that, reductio ad absurdum. And you take logical aspects to their conclusions logically and show the problems. And you also pit two things against each other that are supposed to be in a system, because the system needs to be coherent if it's true. If it's not coherent, it doesn't draw a circle. It's not a true system, because it self-contradicts, therefore it destroys, because it collides internally. It's like an implosion. If that is what happens, you just put those two things and you keep on bumping them into each other. That's why all I kept on talking about, I kept on focusing on was reincarnation, because I was trying to get everything out. But you're right, they did not engage very much at all.
They did not, and it seemed like they could not. And if you guys don't know what he's talking about, my first encounter with the Hebrew Israelites was actually recorded. We went down there and I recorded the whole thing on my Facebook. You can watch it in 3-part series on my YouTube, Operation Apologetics. YouTube.com/Operation Apologetics.
Yeah, it's on the screen. It's on the screen. So everybody.
Oh yeah, there it is right there.
My man Swerve, aka Irvin, just got his own specialized URL on his YouTube channel. And so I think the capitalization is relevant. I do think you need to properly capitalize. So the way it does it is the way you would do it, where operation is all caps, and then the A in apologetics is capitalized. But it's one word together, Operation Apologetics. You just remember the capitalization, because you already know the name of his channel if you're here. So that's awesome. You just go on YouTube, youtube.com/Operation Apologetics. Boom, you got it. That's great, man.
There it is. Yep. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe. But listen, so the videos we put up, so he's referring to those videos where we went out there and he questioned them on reincarnation. And yeah, they did try to give an answer, right? But what I found interesting is they said that you asked them, in order to be reincarnated, you have to die, right?
Yeah.
They say yes. The guy says, "This ain't for you, vocab."
Yeah.
Yeah, you right. In order to be reincarnated, you have to die.
Yeah.
Well, would you ask? Did Elijah die?
Yeah.
No. So how is John the Baptist Elijah?
Yeah, because I said, well, Elijah never died. So
Yeah.
how can Elijah be reincarnated as anybody when he doesn't meet the requirement for reincarnation, which is to die?
Right.
So
and what was their response? Yeah.
I think one guy was, I could be, sometimes it's hard, a lot's going on. I think
Right.
one guy was trying to say he died later. I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that. I think he was trying to say he's taken up to heaven and then dies or something like that. But
heaven? Maybe he died in heaven or something.
That was unclear to me, right? But yeah, I mean the idea was obviously look. I'm going out there, and I know there's a little bit of drama because it's on the street. The thing is, though, these guys engage in street theatrics, right? I'm okay with that as long as truth is still represented, meaning I like a little bit of artistic flair and stuff like that. So I'm okay with all that. So I'm trying to do that, but yet still actually have some substance, so where it's engaging and entertaining, and also, we'll have some fun, but ultimately try to have still a friendly relationship with them. Ultimately, even though it can be a little back and forth, and so I do want to, by God's grace, show them issues with what they believe, so they can leave it and embrace the gospel. Right? It's a process. Okay, it's not like one thing does everything. We don't know what the Lord will use, but so I am setting them up in a sense, where if they're going to say you got to die to be reincarnated, and then they're also going to say Elijah never died, they're going to be hit with the problem of how is Elijah reincarnated? Again, it's based upon their own assumptions in their system. I'm not even bringing external. I only mentioned one time sort of an external thing, which was how do you deal with the fluctuation of the world's population? And he just kept on saying, because everybody from back then is here now, which I wanted to kind of get into that more, but.
And I heard something. So you had a recent debate on this as well, and I think you mentioned this in the debate yesterday. So if everyone was wiped out, right, and then you have Noah, there was how many people on the boat?
So Noah, his 3 sons,
right,
and then of course Noah's wife.
Yeah,
and then his 3 daughters, their 3 wives.
Their wives.
So it's not it's not Brady Bunch, Brady, but you could put them in those little boxes, and you'd have 8 people, just like in the Brady Bunch.
Yeah,
right. You'd be the same. So there's 8, and so we do all come from Adam and Eve, right? But then after that, we all come from Noah and his sons and their daughters, right? It's just the 8 of us. Which a lot of Hebrew Israelites, they say, well. They actually believe in the garden there was other peoples there, so Adam and Eve aren't the father and mother of everybody.
Shut up! No way.
Yeah.
See, I'm still learning stuff. What the?
These are one Westers though, so I think GMS would believe this, but there's other Israelite groups that would not believe this. So it's more the street corner guys who sometimes tend to hold on to this kind of idea, which I think it'd be them. But they still have the bottleneck later on where it's 8 people. So everyone's still descended, biblically speaking, from Noah. So what do you do? So I guess if I was a Hebrew Israelite holding to reincarnation, I probably would have to say something like this, and maybe this may be the answer they use in the future, but I'm okay. It's called doing the steel man argument, where you help strengthen your opponent's argument. I'm okay with that because we can still deal with it, which is this. I would probably say we don't know how many people there were, vocab, before the flood. And so it's all those people coming back again prior to the flood, because they reincarnate later. That's probably what I would try to go with. I would just try to chalk it up to the invisible numbers prior to the flood, because it's a big blank slate. I guess you could get away with that or something.
Yeah,
I guess.
But then you still have to prove it from the scriptures, which they didn't do. It didn't seem like they did.
They were deflecting. They just kept on saying, "I won't believe them," or "I won't understand. It's not for me," as you said. That's fine. All that could be fine. They could be correct. This is not for me, or something like that. Let's just hypothetically again. Let's say it's true. they still should be demonstrating what they believe from the Bible.
100%. For example, I was out there. I mean, you tell me, would I, according to them, be a Hebrew Israelite?
I don't know, man. This guy got the spirit of a Hamite hanging out with Vocab Malone. I don't know if an Israelite his spirit would go with him, man. You might have the spirit of a Hamite. That's probably some of them will probably say that about you.
Oh, isn't that right?
Yeah, meaning if you're a Hamite to them, that means you're straight African and not an Israelite who is passing through Africa, because Hebrew Israelites view themselves as Israelites who are passing through Africa, and therefore they are Semitic, and they were sold out by Hamites who kind of look like them but have a different spirit. But then again, you might be a Jake, as Nate's in the comments saying. So he says he's a Jake. I'm a Jake. A Jake is an unawakened Israelite, because what was Israel's name prior to him being Israel? It was Jacob. So a Jake is a unawakened Israelite. Huldah Williams says you have a different spirit.
That's funny. That is funny. I used to be a Hebrew Israelite. Did you know that? What? Oh, there it is. I used to be a Hebrew Israelite. I was I did a video with this one guy. What was his name?
Oh, yeah. Hold on, let me see. I might even have a picture of that. Actually, that's funny. While I'm bringing that up, you want to tell people the story of that?
So we're sitting out there, and they're going back and forth. Vocab's talking to these guys, and all of a sudden, Vocab turns to him and says, "Hey, if this isn't for me, this is for him, right?" They're like, what? And then he turns his phone. He used to be a Hebrew Israelite. He shows them a picture of me as a Hebrew Israelite. I had the full beard. I had the Power Ranger gear on. It was incredible. So he pulls his picture, shows them the picture. They stop. They look at me. They say, "Man, this ain't for you, Vocab." There it is. Look it. That's me as a Hebrew Israelite. That's from. I look good in
That's
that
from
one,
the
right?
Boom Boom Room. You look great.
That's the Boom Boom Room. Yeah. Yeah, I'm reading my lines in that picture. That's from the Boom Boom Room. Go watch it. It's on Vocab's, or it's on the
David Wood's
Apologetics.
Channel, yeah,
Act 17 Apologetics, Boom Boom Room, Black Hebrew Israelites. Go watch it. So yeah, I'm just joking. I was never a Black Hebrew Israelite, but if let's say I wasn't a Hamite or whatever you called it, right? Because I don't know about all this, right? Let's say I'm not a Hamite. And I am I'm supposed to be a Hebrew Israelite, or I am, and I just don't know it, whatever the case. If it's not for you, shouldn't they at least, according to their ideology, right? Shouldn't they at least try to share it with me so that I believe this ain't for you? Reuben Williams, that's my brother right there.
Okay, all right. Well, so what it is here's the bizarre thing about this, man. Is this is what's so weird about it. Have you ever heard of universalism? To the audience, whatever. Universalism, sometimes when it's in a Christian sense, it will be called Christian universalism. Christian universalism is the idea that all people, everybody, will be in heaven eventually, but the way that they got there, whether it was sort of known to them or not, is still through what Jesus Christ did on the cross. But he literally saved all of humanity, and so they'll be there. Sometimes it's called Christian universalism. I get why it's an attractive doctrine. I don't think it has any rooting at all in the Scripture, and is really a heretical soteriology, ultimately. The reason why I bring that up is because, Irvin, the Hebrew Israelites, in answer to your question, have something called... Now, they don't call it this. This is what I've termed it, because that's exactly what it is. They have something called ethnic universalism. And what it is GMS believes that, let's say you never accept the truth, and you're what they call a 2/3, which I mentioned in Party in the UPK. I bring up that language of 2/3. Like 2/3 will die soon is the line. Because a 2/3 is a Jake who doesn't wake. And what happens is... the missiles, which are predicted, remember we talked about they talked about the arrows? Right. So that's one place. Yeah. So all
arrows are the nukes. And the nukes.
all the nations with nuclear arsenal, right? So they destroy America, and then that's where the Book of Revelation's lake of fire comes into play, is the nuclear holocaust
Oh.
on American soils. And they like to use the picture from Terminator when there's an apocalyptic vision of Los Angeles getting destroyed for imagery for that, right? And so what happens is, as it's destroyed, those people are dead or whatever. But remember, there's reincarnation, the whole point of all this. So guess what happens to you, Irvin, the 2/3 Jake? You come back 3 or 4 generations as an Israelite in the kingdom of God, now established on earth when Israel is in her rulership, and you're now aware of who you are. And so, you lost something, you had an immediate destruction, or maybe you make it out, but you're maimed, or you have radiation burns, or something like that, right? But now you're in this state later on where you recognize, and you're going to own slaves yourselves, regardless of what you did when you heard them on the street. So you might very well have me as your house slave in the future, regardless of what you thought. And that's why I remember that question I asked them. I said, these guys believe Judas is going to be having sex slaves.
Yeah.
Remember I said that?
Oh, yeah.
So strictly by Judas being an Israelite, he's going to be able to have all the slaves he wants, which in GMS's eschatology, they have sex slaves as part of it. Not all the camps do that, but GMS does. Now, I don't know if they would call them sex slaves, but they can get married to how many other women when they want, and they believe sex is marriage, as long as it's with someone who's not already married. It's this whole long thing. And so GMS essentially has sex slaves as part of their eschatology, right? So you would have all that, right? In the kingdom, regardless of what you thought over here, because you'll be woken, you'll be awake.
It's sort of like Islam a little bit, man.
It
is. All the 72 virgins.
Except the beauty is you don't have to do any jihad. All you have to do is be born into the right ethnicity. And actually, it doesn't matter what you do, you're straight. So if we were going to play Pascal's wager, don't worry about it. Keeping the law, like these guys say they keep the law, which they don't. You saw what they were doing on Saturday, yelling at people. That doesn't seem like keeping a day of rest to me.
No.
But that's just me, So you ain't got to worry about it, Nate says Vocab's going to be bringing Irvin lattes.
He's already done that several times. Thank you, Vocab.
Oh yeah, you're right. Actually, I literally have already served him numerous times, literally lattes. And Jonathan Soko says mimosas.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not a mimosa, but I do like the lattes. Dude, okay, if you ever see Vocab anywhere, you gotta have him make you a latte. Just have him go to his trunk, get the latte machine, whip it up. I'm telling you, it's banging.
Well,
am I wrong?
You're right, but the problem is it broke. My espresso machine is broke. It's an espresso machine. And I had a backup, but it was also broke. So I'm using Mr. Coffee right now. And
okay, that's the one I got.
I can make a decent coffee, but I can't make a banging latte right now. Because those things are like the good ones I need to really do it. You can't really do it for much less than $300, and really, you kind of even need to pay a little bit more, at least from what I've seen, to really get the banging ones.
Yours looked more expensive than that, man. It looks like one of the ones from Starbucks. I mean, it was like this big. It was huge.
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't, because those ones from Starbucks, I think last I knew someone that worked there, they were like $1,200 or something a piece. But I'm not sure about it anymore.
We don't want that one.
But I can't do it. Hey, Hoda Williams says he does make a good latte. Hoda, if I understand her lineage, she will not be able to be in the kingdom except as a one of your wives.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she could be one of your wives. Now, if you were an IUIC, you can't marry any non-Israelite women, not even in the kingdom. But GMS allows you to have relations with non-Israelite women. And so if you were a member of GMS and if their eschatology was right, you could still be with Hoda, but she'd have to accept that she wouldn't be the only one.
Well, if I were still an Israelite, what I could do is, if I were a Hebrew Israelite, I could actually really become a Mormon, and I can be married to her or sealed with her. So that way, when I die, if that's true, I'll be sealed, and I get all the Houthis? What do they say? What do they call them?
Houthis. Yeah, you're talking about Islam now.
Yeah, I'll get it all. I'll get it all. I'm winning.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, you're just like Charlie Sheen over here.
Now, you mentioned the different camps. Now, do they you just said they believe different things. So, but reincarnation isn't, they don't believe it amongst all the camps?
Not amongst all. So actually, when I was first setting up this debate on reincarnation, I'm not trying
The
to,
one yesterday.
Yeah, I'm not trying to diss the guy, but another guy was going to do it, right? And it was going to be on his platform. It wasn't going to be on my channel. And he says, well, I changed my mind on this debate. I'm not going to do it on my channel anymore because that topic will divide Israel. And I said, listen, man, look, I get it if you're saying that. I respect that in one sense, but in another sense, I don't, and here's why. Is this Christian versus Israel, or is this Bible truth versus error?
Right.
If there's
Right.
error, then let it come forward, regardless of where the chips fall. Like, why is that your main goal, to preserve Israelite unity versus bringing out the truth of Scripture? He's like, well, man, I just don't think, and so I know all Hebrew Israelites don't believe in reincarnation, but the thing is, a lot of Hebrew Israelites want to debate the same two issues: who are the true Israelites, and should we keep the law? They think that's
their money shot.
Yeah, they think those are their two winning issues, and it's almost all they want to talk about. It's like, okay, can we move? And so we're trying to have some more detailed discussions instead of the same old that they can do by rote memory. And so trying to make them, think a little bit, right? So no, not all Hebrew Israelites believe in reincarnation. It might be a minority position. Probably, I don't know if I want to say 25%, but I feel like it might be more. Don't know. There's not a lot of survey data on these guys, right? But not all of them do believe in reincarnation. But most of the guys out on the street, the one Westers, most of them do.
Right. Now, I got your book right here, so I'm going to open it up and show it on the screen. First of all, if you haven't read his book, go get it. Barack Obama versus the Black Hebrew Israelites. One of the best books on Black Hebrew Israelism. Anyway, so on this page here, you got the list of the groups. Is this isn't the entire list, right? No. There's a ton more, or what?
Yeah, if I did that list right now and I made it more exhaustive, it'd need to be like 10 pages long.
Shoot. And they all believe something different, or just nuanced a little bit?
A lot of them believe some different things. The thing is, there's still this core of Hebrew Israelism. So, they still believe there's this reality that the people they say are Israelites, and that there's a conspiracy to cover it up, and that it has been covered up. And so you have fraudulent Israelites, like those Amalekites running around the land of Israel, as we said in the Boom Boom Room skit. That's the way they would think of it. And also the reason this is relevant to them is because the Most High God looks at you a certain way based upon your lineage. And so there's a theological, ecclesiastical, soteriological, eschatological difference or distinction that matters about basically because of who your dad is or isn't. And so those are kind of the key things. And then there's certain ones, right? And they have little things, and sometimes they're really small. Like ISUPK thinks that women can wear pants. These guys make the biggest deal out of this. And, I think their reasoning is what some people would actually say is, they're women's pants. They're not wearing men's clothes because they're women's pants, right?
Right.
Whereas a lot of the other camps would say, no, women can't wear pants at all. And so that's something they'll debate over. But then you'll have GOCC, the Jonathan Soko. He's in the live chat. He used to be him. They say...
Oh, he was with GOCC at one point?
Yeah, GOCC
had no idea.
Actually holds to water baptism. They'll go out there and baptize. Now, they don't do it in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit because none of them are Trinitarians, but they're the one group I know that believes in baptism, right? And so you kind of go down this list and you see IUIC, even though they're a One West group, says they don't believe in polygamy. They don't believe in multiple marriages, they say, right? And so, that's a distinction with them. So they make a big deal out of when they calculate the new moon because it relates to when you keep the Sabbath. They make a big deal out of that. They've had a lot of splits over those kind of issues. So, they have all these little things, but they have these centralizing things too. It's very similar to, see, the thing is, we could say it's similar to Christianity with the diversity. There's some differences though. And one of them is like kind of, to me, how long Christianity has been around. It's been a long time for people to like kind of argue and separate and split out. Hebrew Israelism was not really that old, and yet they're like gremlins after midnight with water. They are multiplying.
Well, 1869, right?
Yeah, they are multiplying nonstop, bro. They're still like, you know, popping out left and right. Like, and I think it's partially because they are. It's almost like they've been genetically modified to split, because these guys will hold the smallest thing as a doctrinal distinctive that is a distinctive as essential. So everything's essential. So if everything's essential, you're going to split the second there's one little disagreement. And there's Christians like that, the independent fundamentalist Baptists, the KJV only types, they tend to be that way as well. But they're not the only ones. There's some old school Presbyterians that are guilty of this as well. So, you know, I get it. You know, it happens. But it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And next thing you know, you're going to find Hebrew Israelite groups who also embrace the Book of Mormon and claim that Nephi was a black Jew.
Oh, shut up, this guy.
Guess what? I found that exact group last month.
You're not joking.
Yeah, they're in Arizona. They're in Show Low.
That doesn't even make sense.
Well, in a perverse, strange way. I try to understand everything bizarre as best I can. In a perverse, strange way, it does, because the Book of Mormon story is that Israelites came over to the Americas. And One Westers have Native Americans on their 12 tribes chart. So there is some agreement on there's some common ground between certain versions of Mormonism and One Westers when it comes to Hebrew Israelism.
Wow, dude, that's a lot. I was out there for just a few hours, and man, I didn't even know there was this much more to learn about it.
That's why most people, and it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Like, you're studying Islam. You're really strong in Islam, and you've become very proficient in arguments for God existence and dealing with atheists, right? It's like this whole other world. You're like, what?
Yeah.
Hey, you know, so I'm trying to just show a couple things that Christians can kind of grab hold of and see a model, be like, hey, I can ask that question. But you would still have to start at the basics. Like, if you saw guys, you'd have to say, do you believe in reincarnation, for example? You have to start. But that's just kind of how it is. I mean, I ask these guys questions. That's how I learn what they believe. And I learn something new about these guys every day. You know, there's so much there, you know. Hey, it looks like you got a bunch of people wanting to ask questions. If you want, I could put them on the screen. That's up to you.
Yeah, put them on the screen. Let's go.
Well, to the people who say they have questions, Irvin is saying that he could answer them.
I can't see the live chat.
Put them on here. Nate says, is reincarnation a distinctly One West doctrine? And from what I've seen out of Hebrew Israelites, yes. But I'm sure they'll surprise me. You know, it's kind of troubling. According to a 2009 Pew Research survey, 24% of professing Christians believe in reincarnation. Now, I know those are older numbers, 11 years ago, but I haven't been able to find anything up to date yet. And I know it's professing Christians. But
I was just going to say that, yeah.
Still, though, you know, it's like, you know, so there's like a lot of people really susceptible to this. And they say 25% of Americans in general as well. And so,
I mean, that number is probably higher with the people who even believe in karma, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Miss Titus just did a video about that, which was incredible, by the way. But yeah, so what? Reincarnation, karma. I mean, this is the weirdest thing. Now, but they are professing Christians, not maybe they are actual Christians, maybe they're not. Yeah. Maybe not believing that kind of stuff though.
Yeah, the Hebrew Israelites are very keen to remind you the version of reincarnation they believe does not entail. Now, they don't use this word, but this is the technical term: transmigration. Transmigration is Irvin could come back as a tortoise. Your wife could come back as a hippopotamus, right? Mm-hmm. Your son could come back as a butterfly. Your daughter could come back as a long-necked giraffe, right? But that's transmigration. Hebrew Israelites do not believe that. But the guy I debated actually believed that animals are also reincarnated from prior animals. Which
you questioned him on that.
Yeah, I didn't really know what he was going to say on that. That was interesting.
About your dog, right?
Yeah, I guess he's been here before, you know. So so they don't believe in that. So they'll say it's not the pagan or Eastern version. But the thing is that it's unclear exactly the rationale for why reincarnation needs to happen, especially for people who believe Christ has paid the penalty of their sin in some way. Now, this has to do with their confusion over the atonement. This has to do with their confusion about all kinds of things. But there has to be a rationale within the system for why reincarnation needs to occur. It makes sense
Right.
in these Eastern religions because there is this karmic debt that is being paid off in essence for, you know what I'm saying, or this perfection that's being attained, or impurities that are being stripped away, and all this kind of stuff, right? On Hebrew
Right.
Israelism, it's pretty unclear exactly what's happening, and so I almost sit around sometimes, Irvin, and wonder. Did these guys back in the day come up with this just so when a white person's like, but I never owned any slaves, they could be like, yeah, you did. Yes, you did.
Interesting theory.
You know,
Interesting.
I don't know.
I could see that.
I don't know, man.
You did. You used to. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
What else? What other questions you got on there?
Fireboy LD. My question is: the New Testament plagiarized from the Old Testament? You can answer that. I got a book I'm gonna go grab on that, but I'll let you answer it if you want to start.
Is the question?
Is
My
the
question
New Testament plagiarized from the Old Testament?
Plagiarized from the Old Testament. I wouldn't say that it's plagiarized at all. I would say that the New Testament confirms what the Old Testament is saying. There's many quotes from the New Testament that quote the Old Testament as a confirmation. I don't believe that when the apostles and the followers of Jesus wrote the New Testament, it was plagiarized, meaning, oh, let's take this verse and just write this and make it our own. I don't see that happening. In fact, I don't think there's any textual evidence to even suggest that it was plagiarized, only quoted from and confirmed in the New Testament. Fireboy, you actually have been commenting on the other videos, which is awesome. And I'm actually in the process of making a video on this very topic about the New Testament and its reliability and the reliability of the Old Testament. So that video is actually coming pretty soon. Let's see what book Vocab's got on this topic.
Well,
what book is this at?
Let's see here.
Commentary on the New Testament. Ah, there you go. That's a pretty long answer to this question.
Right. I bring that to show this. I believe in something called progressive revelation. That's simply the idea that as history chronologically unfolds, God reveals more of his plan, his purpose, and about himself in real time to humans when he wants, how he wants. So he's slowly, it's like getting to know someone in a way. He's unveiling more about himself and about what he's doing in this world, right? Now, with that understanding, which I think is biblically borne out and kind of just makes sense in a way, he's not just downloading all this automatic information all at once. He is literally engaged in a story of redemption, right? So with that being said, what we now call the Old Testament, it was not called that then, is the foundation for the New Testament. And so in the very beginning, God communicates immediately, according to the book of Genesis. He communicates directly with his creatures, Adam and Eve, directly. When Cain's about to kill Abel, communicates with Cain. And you see this continuing process, right? And then you have prophets who are mouthpieces for God to others. And you have these poetry sections in the Bible. And you have all this stuff, and then it gets sealed up together in sort of one book, sometimes called the Tanakh in Hebrew. And it's this long story of God's dealing with humanity, and at a certain place in the story, beginning midway through Genesis or whatever, he begins dealing specifically with Abraham and his descendants. And so he's dealing with Israel especially as sort of a way to deal with the whole entire world, right? He's still doing things like sending Jonah, who was of Israel, out to the Ninevites, who are not Israelites. But this is the way he's doing it. And he tells Abraham and everyone all along, I'm going to bless Israel, that's Abraham's descendants, so that all families of the world would be blessed. This is the Abrahamic covenant. The point is, while that's happening, there's all these promises God is making. All these promises about a delivering Messiah, this figure that emerges from the text that's being described in passages such as Isaiah, Psalm 22, Micah 5:2, Isaiah 53, Genesis 3:15 even, right. And so then the question is, who is this Messiah going to be that Moses has been speaking about, and David has been speaking about, and that God has been speaking to the prophets about. Who's the Messiah going to be? Because it sounds like he's going to do a whole lot of saving, you know? Well, all these promises of God to his people, they are fulfilled in a very real way when Jesus Christ, means Jesus Messiah, shows up. And then he points back to the Old Testament to say, hey, I am fulfilling these scriptures you've been reading about for thousands of years as a people. I'm fulfilling them right now. That's literally what he did in Luke chapter 4. He goes into the synagogue, he opens up a scroll in Hebrew, he reads from Isaiah 61, he closes it, and he says to the audience, this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. He literally does that. The point is, Jesus is showing that what he is doing is in continuity with what God was talking about all along, and it matches up and aligns up. That does not mean people's understanding was always correct. And so sometimes he has to recalibrate their understanding or interpretations. This happens a lot with the disciples, especially. And then when he leaves, there's a future plan that's going to happen that he talks about, but it's not yet, but it's beginning to be because of what happened at the cross, right? And so then you see this New Testament emerge because now you have a new covenant. It means, in essence, a new set of promises based upon the old, but the Bible says Hebrews are better. So the New Testament is constantly pointing back to the Old Testament is the point, because it's showing it's the foundation. The New Testament's not untethered. It's not coming out of nowhere. It is directly tied and directly tethered and directly strung and directly connected like a perfectly fitting Lego piece to the Old Testament. But the Old Testament is incomplete if you do not have the New Testament, because you have the foundation, but you have to go what goes on top of it as well. But you can't not have the foundation or else what it's on. So they go together perfectly. Plagiarism would be a situation where it's just like copying it and it's just like not sort of recognizing and not tying it together. It's not intertextual. I mean, really, like in the Book of Mormon, Joseph Smith copies whole chunks from the KJV version of Isaiah, which is like, how did he translate it exactly the same? He didn't. He just copied what the KJV editors did and put it in the Book of Mormon, right? Some of the best parts of Book of Mormon are those plagiarized parts of Isaiah. So then you look and you see the New Testament authors are constantly quoting the Old Testament. They're not plagiarizing. They're saying things like this: doesn't the scripture say, or this has been fulfilled, or as the prophet said, or according to the scriptures it read. All this kind of stuff. They are showing we're not believing some weird, wacky thing out of nowhere. There was a prequel to this, and we are now the sequel. But there was something that came before, right? And so there's a very tight-knit family-like relationship. It's kind of like asking, hey, that son, did he plagiarize his father? He looks like his father because he has the same sort of source, right? They look like each other. There's a family relationship. So really between these documents, the Old and New Covenant, the Old and New Testament, there's a familial relationship. And it's not plagiarism. It's a tight intertextuality that brings not just the literature together, but the theology together as well. And so that's a great question, and it's an important question. But I think it's beautiful the way over thousands of years you have this interlocking puzzle that connects when you had different people on different continents from different backgrounds writing in different languages write one overall grand arching story. There is literally nothing like that in the history of humanity. And when I say nothing, there is nothing. Muhammad wrote one book during his lifetime and it doesn't even connect, and it's not tied to anything else prior except for some stories he heard when he was trading camels. Seriously. Same thing with the Book of Mormon. One guy, and he clearly plagiarized certain parts of it. There's nothing like the scripture that's all these different people together in this way, and it matches up. There's just nothing like it. There is no book like the Bible. Regardless of what you think about the Bible, there is nothing like it as far as the way that it has this wild 1,000-year history, and yet is put together in one book called the Bible that has a cohesive whole and a beginning and an ending. It's utterly amazing.
You should play the hand clap sound. Go for it.
Okay, yeah. Great idea. Sorry for the long answer there, but that's a great idea. Where'd the stupid hand clap? There it is. Ho!
Hey.
Oh, wait, I didn't hit it. My bad.
There we go.
Second question. Was the New Testament written in Greek? Irvin, you always got to go first. It's your show.
Second question, was the New Testament written in Greek? Yeah, Koine Greek. It was written in Koine Greek. That's an easy answer.
That's exactly right. Here, let me show him. Let me show him real quick. Here. Let me show you real me show you.
He might be trying to go the route of we don't have any of the Greek
There.
manuscripts.
That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. That's 2 Corinthians.
There we go. That was an easy answer. You got a longer answer for that one?
Nah, man, that works. Old Testament's written in Hebrew.
Oh man, you got to read through some of those other comments on those other videos I got, Vocab. They're
Add on a
incredible.
question to Fireboy's question. Why do you think the general population carries the belief that the Bible has been tampered with, like it's common factual information?
Add on a question to it. Why do you think the general population carries the belief that the Bible has been tampered? Oh, interesting. Like it's common factual. Oh, I see. What the question looks like is, why do people think that the Bible's been corrupted and tampered with, and they consider it to be a fact within history, that the Bible's been changed and corrupted? I believe because people, my answer is that I think people really want to discredit the Bible. I mean, these stories passed down from Bart Ehrman and people like him who have said that the Bible's been passed down from generation to generation, just generation, like the telephone game, copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And their logic suggests that because it's like the telephone game, a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, they believe that as a result, errors and discrepancies and changes must have crept into the text as a result. But they have very little textual evidence to even verify those claims. In fact, it seems as if most of the textual evidence is on the side of the Christian that says that the Bible has not been changed or corrupted. Just looking at the many manuscripts, number one, and how they just coincide, like you just said. I mean, you have thousands of manuscripts spread across almost every continent and written over hundreds of years, all making one cohesive story. I mean, it's highly unlikely that a person or a group of people got together to change the text. First of all, to agree to change the text, number one. Number two, to actually change the text and accept that corrupted book as, scripture. That's highly unlikely. So I think with the manuscript evidence, and also the highly unlikelihood that actually happened, I don't know why people suggest that the Bible has been corrupted and changed and accept it as a fact in history.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's almost like, I don't know, like urban legends at this point, And then, it's wild if you think about it. Bart Ehrman, you mentioned him. I mean, he was on Comedy Central. He was on the Daily Show. I mean, this is a while ago.
Oh, no way.
When what's his face still hosted it, Jon Stewart. But I mean, that's crazy, right? That's how sort of mainstream that got.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You're not going to have a textual critic Christian response, on the Daily Show, where they're going to say, well, actually, It's funny. Bar Ehrman's book called Misquoting Jesus, which I do say is a great title for a book. It's very catchy, Misquoting Jesus. The funny thing is, it gives textual variance, and it never has, to my recollection, except with the exception, I think, of maybe one place, actually places where the Bible misquotes Jesus.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I read it a while back. I don't remember that. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, well, so, but I think one thing that happens, I get why, an atheist was like, they would say they don't believe in miracles, and so the Bible, something's up with it because it has miracle accounts, right? I get that in a sense. But, I see some Muslim friends in the chat. They have got to say the Bible's corrupted because they had a little situation where the cart got before the horse, or wait. Yeah, that's how you say it.
Yeah,
because
that's how you say it.
Muhammad in the Quran is like, hey, this book, man, it agrees with the stuff I've written here in my book. I know that's not exactly how he said it, right? But that's basically what he said. And
you sure? No, I think you did.
Yeah, and then later on, Muslims begin looking at the Bible closer than apparently Muhammad ever did, and they're like, hey, this book doesn't really agree with our book, but Muhammad said it agrees with this book.
Yeah.
So the Bible must be corrupt. That's
There we
only
go.
logical solution. That's the answer.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
there it is.
and
There it
so
is. Good answer. Good
yeah, so
answer.
they
Good
have
answer.
got to. Basically, Muslims are stuck with the task of having, and that's why they like to copy Bart Ehrman's work. That's why they're like, well, as Bart Ehrman says, that's why they're sort of stuck with that reality in their mind. That's what they've got to say, but that doesn't make it so. I mean, it's a fascinating thing, and even the Book of Mormon, to a certain extent, does the same thing. And Mormons do the same thing with the Bible. They say, "Insofar as it is translated correctly,"
Exactly.
which I think they mean copied in that. I don't even think they have they use the lingo of "insofar as it is translated correctly," but then they talk about corruption of text. Well, that's not translation; that's transmission. So it's not even
Exactly.
Get your criticism straight, man.
Oh man, I love it when Mormons come over. We invite them in. We give them. Well, they don't take any drinks or anything from us, but we have a great conversation. We have a great conversation.
Here's one for you, bro. I have a question. Do you believe Jonah lived in a fish?
No, easy answer. I don't think Jonah lived in a fish. I don't think Jonah set up camp inside of a fish and said, "I'm going to stay here."
What do you think? What do you think? I think Jonah was.
What he's asking me is,
I know.
do I believe Jonah was swallowed by a whale? Right?
Yeah.
I believe that the Bible says that Jonah was swallowed by the whale. If the Bible says it, I believe it. Now, if you're asking me how that happened or how I can explain it, I don't have an answer for you. That's actually not a topic that I've studied mostly, and in fact, I think it's irrelevant to the type of apologetic that I use. I believe that the Bible says it. I believe it. How? I don't know. Just like a cell phone. I don't know how the cell phone works. I know it works, right?
Well,
That sort of thing. What would you say to that?
a few things. One is that there's no reason to discount if a person understands that God is the creator of all creatures, all things, and made them out of nothing. There's no reason to discount when the same God who said in Genesis, "Let there be," and there was. There's no reason to discount when he also tells us that one of his creatures was inside of one of his other creatures, and a very abnormal thing. I mean, the Bible says God called the fish, basically, told him to come over there, swoop him up, and spit him out. I mean, God is sovereignly in control of this situation. They are his creatures. It is not normal. It is certainly a supernatural account with natural things happening, meaning, God is sovereignly guiding this well, and people don't usually be in wells, not even for part of 3 days. You know what I'm saying? It says 3 days, but Hebrew reckoning could have been 1 day and then part of 1 day, part of another, just like Jesus in the tomb, which is exactly my next point. Jesus said, "No other sign given this wicked generation other than the sign of Jonah, as he was in the earth or the well for 3 days." A way to speak of his temporary displacement and then future resurrection. My point is, if you're a Muslim listening, you say Isa ibn Maryam, Isa ibn Maryam, you call him, as a prophet. Well, he said Jonah, he confirmed Jonah. I'm not saying Fireboy was, I don't know about Fireboy, but I'm saying to anybody who would say that, if they're Muslim watching, because I know you have a lot of Muslim viewers, and I just wanted to remind them that Jesus confirmed. And even to an atheist, if it now they'll say, well, that's a big if. I understand that, but based upon the truth of the matter, that Jesus is not just the Messiah but God, when he certifies Jonah, we can accept Jonah sort of even more, not even withstanding what we believe prior to it. Jesus certifies it as legit. Now, again, if you're a Muslim, when it comes to whales, you've actually got more problems, because Surah 68:1 and Tafsir Ibn Abbas, they seem to indicate that the earth is on a whale's back. And so, to the Muslim friends in the house, I would like to actually know what they think about when we start talking about whales. What do you guys say? Because we got the earth on a whale's back. And they try to discount Tafsir Ibn Abbas, but the thing is, you're playing some clips of, guys like, Zakir Naik saying Tafsir Ibn Abbas is like one of the most legit early commentators, and these Muslims will just say, well, he's not right. We can just throw it out because it doesn't sound right. It sounds fishy.
Hey, I see what you did there.
Yeah. Look at this. Inalienable rights. Vocab really hates the Arabs. The only actual Semitic people.
Are you anti-Semitic?
Vocab, why do you hate the Arabs so much? Are you anti-Semitic?
Oh wow.
Well, I mean, I don't think it would matter to this person, but they probably don't know. But I was a member for a year straight, along with Irvin, a member of an Arabic church. So if I hate Arabs, I chose a strange place to serve at.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? The answer is no. And inalienable rights, are you conflating Islam with being Arab? Because I thought Islam was a universal religion. And so you don't want to make the mistake that some white people make that says being Arab equals being a Muslim, especially when there was a grip of Arab Christians in the Middle East prior to the advent of Islam was ever there. So that'd be kind of weird if you were going to say being Arab, because if you're saying anti-Semitic, I would wonder why. If because it's criticized Islam, then maybe you want to say, am I anti-Islamic? But a religion is not a race. So I'm just wondering why you would even think this is a good question to ask. Just something, just something to say, you know?
Yeah. You want it to be highlighted on the screen.
Yeah, hold it. She wants to know, why do you hate Arabs?
Yeah. I don't think you'd like her too much.
Yeah. Well, would we be considering her Arab?
Yeah.
We would?
I think so.
Okay, then there's at least one.
I think so.
There's at least one Arab I don't like. He's right. I was kidding. And let's see. Afraid Sakari says Muhammad had a flying horse. So what's your point? I don't know. They might be. I'm not sure which thing they're talking about here.
Talking about the night journey is.
I guess I don't know. Jonathan Soko, it looks like he kind of caught. It's very interesting. Fireboy asked if the Old Testament, got plagiarized by the New. Apparently, Jonathan Soko Googled the question that Fireboy asked, who's also the person who asked about plagiarism, and apparently Fireboy is plagiarizing Google because Jonathan just Googled the exact question he asked, and it was already online. The exact wording. So it's kind of funny. The guy asking if the New Testament plagiarized the Old Testament is literally plagiarizing the internet. That's classic, man. You know what? Funny. My irony detector just totally went off, and it sounded like this.
I love it.
Yeah. So that was good right there.
That's funny. I love it.
Jonathan Soko. Maybe you can do this one. I'm not the guy for this. Does Isa more correctly translate as Esau?
I haven't really looked into that, but I do know that them calling Jesus Isa was an incorrect. They were incorrectly saying his name originally. I didn't really look too much into that, but I heard something previously. I don't know if it was David or Sam saying something about they incorrectly said his name. I don't know, something like that. What is that all about?
There's a lot of confusion when it comes to this point, but it seems like, from what I've been able to see, is that Isa would be like one of the Arabic ways, I think, to say Esau. And so we put that gag in the skit of Muhammad.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah, we put it in there, Muhammad meets the Hebrew Israelites. Because he's calling Jesus Isa, and you guys are like, wait, are you calling Jesus Esau?
Yeah.
And then Muhammad gives, if you listen to the script carefully, he gives a nonsensical answer. But I don't know a lot of people understand, like, Muhammad purposely saying something that doesn't make sense. It makes sense within what the Muslim would say, but it doesn't actually make sense for real, right? And so he gives this nonsensical answer as to why, because he's like, well, yeah, so Esau would mean this, but it means this, and so that's why we call him Esau. But it doesn't. His final statement doesn't follow from what he just said. So he gives a nonsensical answer. But it's kind of funny to have that with the Hebrew Israelites, because they view Esau as like the progenitor to white people, a highly offensive thing. And so you got a Muslim calling Jesus Isa, which is like basically, I guess, Arabic for Esau. And they're like, wait, what? Why are you calling Jesus the white man, right?
Oh, man.
And Inalienable Rights says, Isa is the original Semitic name. Okay, so Inalienable Rights, you would seem to be a Muslim there. I have seen this response given before, but I have not seen evidence given for this. I don't know about you, Irvin. Maybe you can comment, Hulda, because first of all, Inalienable Rights, I'm not trying to be funny here, Semitic is not a language. So what do you mean Isa is the original Semitic name? What language specifically? Do you mean like all the Semitic languages that was? And what's your evidence it was originally, and what was it changed to, and how did it get changed? Right. So we're just trying to really understand this. And he says there are no Greek or Roman names, just the made up stuff. What's that have to do with the Arabic name for Jesus? I think there
are no Greek or.
Yeah, I think we're.
I think he's tired, man. I think he's sleeping.
Yeah, I think we're having a communication problem. You know what? Inalienable Rights, maybe Fireboy LD can plagiarize some answers for you too, and get you some, get you some stuff over there from Google Books. Yeah, maybe you can kind of slide in there, and it's like then it's like you copy someone's paper in school, but you didn't know they plagiarized, so then you're really in trouble. You're cheating and plagiarizing.
Oh man, that's funny.
Do you see any other questions? I don't see.
I actually don't have the comments up for some reason.
Oh, sorry. Except for the one that Fireboy plagiarized. But you know what?
Yeah.
A lot of the Quran's plagiarized, and we deal with that, so we could deal with this too. Only the 7 undisputed Pauline epistles appear to have most likely written by Paul the Apostle, the Book of Revelation by John of Patmos, not John the Apostle, nor by the author of the other Johannine literature. Scholars disagree about whether Paul wrote his Deutero-Pauline epistles and whether Simon Peter wrote First Epistle of Peter, is the next thing it says. So yeah, I can tell this is
that's a plagiarized thing.
All of the New Testament books that mention an author are most likely forgeries. I don't have a few things there. The Quran mentions some of these people, and it mentions this concept of Messiah. So I'm just wondering, I don't know if Fireboy's a Muslim, actually. I
think Fireboy's an atheist. Based on the comments from other videos, I think he's an atheist.
Well, so we just kind of do this. Look, I understand you're reading a summary of some scholarly conclusions, and I think most of us that get into the field of New Testament studies recognize that it's the fact that a lot of New Testament scholars, especially of the secular variety, only recognize 7 of Paul's letters as being Pauline. Bart Ehrman will be one of them. They would say, well, there's 7 of the 13. A few things about that. One is the person who's going to put that out there as an argument, they actually have to understand to some extent. I understand everyone can't be a scholar, so I have grace on people. They got to put it out there to some extent, their reasons why they think that. They can't merely just be plagiarizing some summary of some guy that said something that, well, they all believe this, right? What are the reasons why any given person believes it is what we want to look at, right? And when you look at the reasons, they are problematic on every kind of level. One example of this is they'll do things like look at 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, Titus especially. They'll say, well, if you look at the language here, it's not identical to some of Paul's language in his other letters. And also, he's speaking about deacons and elders and things like that, as if this church was like developed in some kind of ecclesiastical structure where there was leaders and this kind of thing. We don't think, now they'll say we know, but it's really based upon other presuppositions. We don't think the church was this developed at that time. So since the church wasn't this developed, clearly Paul couldn't have written this because the church wasn't that developed in a structure at the time he would have been writing this. So it had to be something after Paul. It couldn't have been Paul himself. These are literally some of these are like key reasons why they do this. They do a long explanation of it, but that's based upon all kinds of problems of assumptions they're bringing to the table, right? Not only that, some of the idea of like certain language doesn't match gets real flimsy real quick. And one is Paul, when he's writing those letters, those are pastoral epistles. These are personal letters from one person to an individual. They're also at the end of his life. So if there's some language that's not identical, as if people only have a certain amount of vocabulary they would ever use, to other letters they accept as Pauline, you gotta like take in the very real factors of he's a different audience. He's writing at a different stage in life. When it comes to 1 Thessalonians to the end of his life, you're talking about 20 years. This is over the course of Paul writing 20 years worth of Why would we assume it's going to be all identical vocabulary? It's a really strange, almost arbitrary way that they come to some of this stuff. And most people I find who accept these conclusions, like they take one intro to New Testament class at community college or something like that, I very rarely find them finding what are the responses to these, because the responses are way stronger than the so-called consensus that he's trying to talk about. The responses are way stronger. They're way more rooted in history, and they're way more rooted in actually the actual text, meaning whenever we see these letters, they have certain names attached to them, and they don't have other names attached to them. We don't have any copy of 1 Timothy that has that part of it that says it's written to someone else by someone else. It's actually universal. So when you have universal agreement, now you could say, well, this manuscript was later, and this was there's no variations. There's variance in the New Testament text through different copying things. There's not variance when it comes to authors. So that's a very real thing, meaning there's a massive historical pedigree. So why do we just assume, well, because of these basically arbitrary reasons, that's the case? So we really got to do some more work, I think. And there's some really good books on this. One person I like who writes on some of these issues is Michael Kruger. Michael Kruger is one person who writes on some of these issues. I would look up like his things. And I don't remember if the McGrews get into this as well, or Balcom, but there's some good work out there. Ben Witherington III, but I would start with Kruger especially. But
good answer. Good answer. Does that help? Was that Fireboy who asked that question?
Yeah. Maybe you want to do, I don't know, you want to do one more question?
Yeah, let's do another question. I like questions. I like Q&A.
Yeah. Shout out to Nate and Soko, and who else is up in here? Who else? Oatmeal Butterball. Shout out to you too. And Oatmeal
I like
Butterball says, the Bible has been changed. The day and light were created on separate days. That in itself shows you right from the start the contradictions. The Bible has been changed. Wait, what?
Talking about the great light in Genesis. When
they're talking about the first day and the fourth day.
Yeah.
Well, just I'm gonna stop right there. I'll let Irvin comment on the actual.
No, go ahead.
But let me say one thing: Oatmeal Butterball. Remember, we were talking about has the Bible been altered or changed? Your statement, and maybe, hey, it's YouTube, so I'm trying to give you some grace here. You can make little comments. Your statement literally has nothing to do with the Bible was changed. You're saying because you think these two things contradict each other, it's evidence of the Bible being changed. Hypothetically, you could have, if you're going to say it's not a contradiction, but if you want to say it's a contradiction, that contradiction could have been there from the beginning. If there's a contradiction in a text, that's not indication of alteration. That's odd, because that means you would be assuming the original was not contradictory at all in any way. Which, if you're assuming everything was not contradictory at all in any way, guess what you're assuming? It's not the product of man, ultimately. Right. Because only God cannot err, no lie, perfection, right? So that's a funny thing. You don't go to what you view as an internal contradiction as evidence has been altered. You see what I'm saying? You'd have to go to something else. You'd have to say, for example, let me help you out. You'd have to say, First John 5:7-8, the comma Johannian, everybody knows the Bible's been changed. Look at 1 John 5:7-8. That would be an example. Then we could have a discussion about that, right? But this actually is not even a legitimate or any kind of discussion in relation to text
Claim
issues.
to change it. Yeah.
Yeah, just saying. But I know what you're trying to say. You know, I know what you're trying to say, though.
And it was light and night and day, and then all of a sudden, a few days later, he creates the sun.
Oh, it shows that it has been changed because God wouldn't make a mistake. So, Oatmeal Butterball, you're an interesting person. You seem that you do believe God authored Scripture, but yet he did not include any contradictions, but there were later contradictions added in. Is that your position? That's an interesting position. Why do you think God would go to the trouble of sort of authoring a book and then not go to any trouble to preserve it in any way? Which, by the way, is the exact argument Bart Ehrman makes. He's like, well, God couldn't have written the Bible because he didn't want to preserve his word. Seems like he would have preserved it if he authored it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think that wasn't misquoting Jesus too, wasn't it?
Yeah. That's actually a theological argument, though. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. If God authored the Bible, yeah.
Yeah, I see people say that, but I mean, there's remember the light that is there in the very beginning in Genesis 1:3 is not said to be the sun. So on fourth day is when the sun is made, and we could talk about why that is. I think a key reason is to get the Israelites away from any potential of worshiping the sun, which almost everybody in every culture ends up doing. They all end up worshiping the sun, right? And so here you have a situation where God is basically saying, hey, you don't really need the sun, and look, I'll put it on the fourth day, and I'm just going to call it the greater light. I'm not even going to call it the sun. Greater light, lesser light. It doesn't even call them that. It's partially a polemic against some of the idolatry around there. But this is a miraculous week. God is bringing things out of nothing. He is lights over here, the sun's over here. He is sustaining it supernaturally. So it's an extraordinary week. I don't disagree with that. And God did it in the order he wanted to for a very certain way, but I don't see how light on the first day and the sun on the fourth day, I don't see how that's a contradiction. But
I think they just don't understand that that how there could be light if there is no sun, and if there's light, how there can be day. But there's nothing that suggests that because it's daytime or it's light out that there has to be a sun, or the sun has to be there. I don't think there's anywhere that suggests that. And like you said, I mean, think about it. For God to create something out of nothing, okay, or in our case, it's nothing to us, but for something to just pop into existence out of nothing, I think that's a miracle all in and of itself. So for there to be light without sun, I think that shows another work of God's hand, another miracle, so to speak, that we don't need the sun for there to be daytime.
Yeah, creatio ex nihilo.
Yeah.
I mean, remember, there's nothing prior to this, you know what I mean?
Right.
I'll be curious. Sometimes I like to look at my little study Bible and see what they say. I'm just curious.
Is this the Vocab 2013 study Bible?
No, this is interesting here. What's this say here? Nah, that's not that much of a helpful note. But here, this is an interesting note I found in the ESV Study Bible. I mean, I feel like we already discussed this, but I like to sometimes see what they say. Here's the ESV Study Bible's note here on verse 14. This section corresponds closely with the ordering of day and night on the first day, involving the separation of light and darkness. Here the emphasis is on the creation of lights that will govern time, as well as providing light upon the earth, verse 15. By referring to them as the greater light and lesser light, verse 16, the text avoids using terms that were also proper names for pagan deities linked to the sun and the moon. Chapter 1 deliberately undermines pagan ideas regarding natures being controlled by different deities. To the ancient pagans of the Near East, the gods were personified in various elements of nature. Thus, in Egyptian texts, the gods Ra and Thoth are personified in the sun and the moon, respectively. The term made, Hebrew asa, in verse 16, as the ESV footnote shows, need only mean that God fashioned or worked on them. It does not of itself imply that they did not exist in any form before this. Rather, the focus here is on the way in which God has ordained the sun and moon to order and define the passing of time according to his purposes. Thus, the references to seasons, verse 14, or appointed times, ESV footnote, and to days and years are probably an allusion to the appointed times and patterns in the Hebrew calendar for worship, festivals, and religious observance. Oh, that's an interesting background anyways.
Yeah.
Appreciate the perspective, but what else we got, man? I think, let's see. Did Adam have a belly button?
Who?
Did Adam have a belly button? That's the question, bro. Did Adam have a belly button?
I've never heard that.
Well, because the idea is he...
Fireboy.
Yeah, the idea is he didn't have a mom, so there's no umbilical cord.
I can see that now.
Yeah. The real question is, did he have an innie or an outie?
Is that Fireboy, is that a real question, or are you being funny?
That's a common question people actually ask.
I've never heard that.
The Bible doesn't say if Adam had a belly button or not. Certainly his sons and daughters would have had because they were born of Eve. Adam himself, if I had to put money on it, I would say yes, because he's made as a complete human male. And you got to understand his whole birth/creation is miraculous. He's made directly sort of by God, dust, breath of life, not by a process of procreation. And so it's true, there's no umbilical cord, but he is a complete mature male. So Adam would have been 20 seconds old, looking like a 30-year-old man. Right? This is a kind of mind-blowing idea.
Yeah.
So I would think he would be a fully mature human and have a belly button. But the Bible doesn't say for show. So, and then Oatmeal says, I invite you, he's doing dawah, to look at the Quran. Because notice he said invite.
Yeah. Oh, I see. I don't suggest that to anyone. No, well, go fine. Go look at it.
Well,
go read it.
You've looked at the Quran.
I looked at the Quran. I did. And in fact, that's how I kind of got into all this. You know the story. These guys may not, but yeah, that's how I got into apologetics with looking into Islam. My wife was Muslim. And, it's funny because I was about 4 seconds away from becoming Muslim. No joke. Because I'm looking at everything and I'm like, wow, maybe there's some truth in this, right? But then the more I look, the more I'm like, oh, heck no, there's absolutely no way. So I invite whoever wants to go look at the Quran, go look at the Quran critically. And I'm confident that when you look through it, you'll see not only contradictions, you'll see falsehoods, you'll see unfulfilled prophecies. I mean, not to get into that, but unfulfilled prophecies and things like that. But oatmeal butterball, no thank you. You're inviting me to Islam.
And Helio Wright says, to Afro-Asiatic people, the Bible was changed because the camel, which is revered, is forbidden and the swine encouraged.
Interesting.
In the Quran, you're allowed to eat camel, which we brought out in the skit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because the Hebrew Israelites are like, wait, what? You can eat camel? And right? And it's like, yeah. And in fact, you can drink their, and yeah. And so there's this discussion, right? And so the way it works is the Quran is the thing that's out of order by like randomly altering that. Now, the New Covenant has different food laws because there's a new covenant. The Quran is not a new covenant, even though it's after the new covenant. It's this weird regression and then randomly arbitrary changes things for no good reason. But I don't see how swine is encouraged in the Bible. I think it's allowed under the new covenant. But if I was alive walking around with Moses in the desert, Irvin and I are walking around in the desert with Moses, let's say, we would not be eating any swine. because that would have been God's revelation to us at that time that we need to keep. Yeah. So I don't know how. I never heard the Bible encourage swine. Encourage swine is sort of a
not encouraged
thing. Big Yellow says, "Why didn't you ask if Adam was circumcised?" These are I've never seen questions like this. You got a weird audience, bro.
What the heck, Big Yellow Duck? I don't think Adam was circumcised. I don't think that happened until Abraham.
Yeah, it would seem like that's a new thing being introduced, but
yeah,
that was an interesting question. All right, what do we? Maybe we got this one last question. The same person asked, which was, why was the Apocrypha removed?
I wouldn't say that it was removed. I would say that it was never even part of the canon to begin with.
Oh, that's right.
I believe it. That's right. I believe that, and this is common, that the Jews never accepted the Apocrypha as a text. It wasn't until later on when it was added, then removed, and added, and then removed, and then now it's still there. So the Catholics accept it. I was going to ask about that with the Hebrew Israelites, and apparently they accept the Apocrypha. So to say that, to ask why it was removed, that's nonsense, because it was never part of the canon to begin with. It was, in fact, added by certain groups.
Yeah, 100%. A great question to ask would be, do you know how many times Jesus said, "It is written," and then followed it by a quotation from the Apocrypha? Zero! None. Yeah. Hey, man, you went in with a freestyle? You think you can hear a beat?
Oh, I can't hear the beat. I could hear your echo there, though.
Well, I haven't played a beat.
Well, you played the hand claps earlier. I couldn't hear the hand claps.
You really can't hear the beat? Like, tell me if you can hear this. Hold on. You can't hear that?
No.
Really?
No.
What do you do?
Yeah, I want to hear your freestyle, man. Oh shoot, I lost your thing.
What'd you lose?
There we go.
Oops, hold on.
I can see.
I'll get it in there. Hold on. Let me just jump it in here, bro. Let me get it in here, bro. All right, so you think we should do it as a closer, bro?
Do it.
All right. Let me get it set up here. Man, okay. All right. I'm having trouble getting us both on the screen at the same time. It's not cooperating with me. It just wants to put only one of us on the screen.
That's all right. You're the MC,
right
bro.
now, she's putting you.
See me. There you go.
I know, but I want to try to have you on here too, man. It's not letting me. Yeah, I can't get you on here. All right, we'll do it. Rewind the beat. This is a Jonathan Soko beat. Let's rewind it, and then we'll do it. I don't know why you can't see Irvin. I'm sorry, Irvin.
That's all right, man. All right. It's your show. It's your world.
It's your show, bro.
Yeah, it is, right?
Yeah, it is. You can still back me up, though, because you can hopefully hear something.
I'll go to your rhythm. You go for it.
All right, yo. This bee is smooth like silk, inalienable, talking about cow's milk. And plus the camel, if I gotta eat something, it ain't that animal, it ain't that mammal, or its humps. But Soko, man, he made his beat that bumps. It jumps up like crisscross. Jesus the Christ, he paid the cost on the cross. Yes, he died. Despite sorrow 4 or sorrow 5, it's a lie. Just cause nice. You from the tribe of Qurayshi don't mean you know. Say he said something, yo, that was false. And deep it's out now, you gotta be an adult and accept it. Be mature, man, his vision, it was blur. When it came to the Old Testament and the New, and now we're checking it. We look at what Muhammad said and line it up with the words that I read. Jesus the Christ, what did he say? What'd he say? He said he's Yahweh embodied. Don't care if you like it. Muhammad don't know, cause he's not psychic. Not even a psychic. Nah, he ain't. So check this out now, become a saint. How do you do that? You gotta get the paint upon your door. Get it? I can go back to the past over. That's when who? Jehovah sent that angel of death on down. You're only saved if you're down with the God of Israel. How you show? Have that lamb's blood on the door, you know. Peep this out, that's why he's a lamb. Sacrifice, and that was the plan. I am. John 8, he said it. Exodus 3, you best to check it. Put those together, and what's the truth? Jesus Christ, he's a vessel of booth. Meaning, and now we're gleaning like Ruth. Here we go again, we speak that truth. Grab the microphone, begin swerving. Shout out to my main man,
That was awesome. That was awesome. Good job, man.
Yeah, man. That's the end of the show, bro. I'm about to hit this button.
Let's go, baby.
All right.
Take it easy.
Peace out.